In the last class, I have explained you about the discovery of the cell. Now in today's class, let us discuss about the discovery of the nucleus. The nucleus was discovered by the scientist Robert Brown. It was a very significant observation in the science of cell biology. There were many scientists before the Robert Brown like Felice Fontana who observed the dark bodies inside the nucleus, but they were unable to claim, or they don't claim, these dark bodies are present in each and every cell, and this is an integral part of the cell. As they failed to claim about these dark bodies which is present inside the cell, so in the 18th century, Robert Brown observed the epidermal cells of the orchid leaves. Along with this, he also observed some other plants and some other cells which are present in the different plant bodies. So by these observations, he came to know that the dark bodies can be found in the integral part of the cell, and these dark bodies he named it as nucleus. So the credit for the discovery of nucleus goes to Robert Brown. He observed the epidermal cells and the other cells in the different plant bodies, and he claimed, or he described, that the dark bodies which are present inside the cell are nucleus, and this forms the integral part of the cell. The gap between the discovery of the cell and the discovery of nucleus is very huge gap, or very large gap, 150 to 175 years of gap between these two discoveries. In the previous activities, we have seen how to make a slide or how to prepare a mount to observe it under the microscope. Here is the view of onion cells and the human cheek cells. So let us discuss the similarities and the differences which we can see between the onion cells and the human cheek cells. When we observe the onion cells, that is, when we observe the plant cells, we can see that these are rectangular in shape, and these rectangular cells are compactly arranged. That means they are packed. They don't have any intercellular spaces between them. The onion cells are arranged in such a way that one cell is different, or one cell is separated from the other cell by the membrane which is called as cell membrane, and around the cell membrane a double layered thick wall or the protective layer is present which is called as cell wall. We know that in the plant cells, the cell wall or the protective layer is present around the cell membrane. So as the onion cells are the plant cells, so we can see, or we can observe, the thick layer, that is cell wall, which separates one cell from the another cell. And we can also see the dark bodies, that is nothing but the nucleus, which is present in the onion cell. In the onion cells, the nucleus is present at the peripheral positions. It is not found at the center. So it is usually present at the periphery of the cell in the plant body. And the fluid which is present inside the cell is termed as cytoplasm. And in this fluid, that is in the cytoplasm, the cell organelles, which are the internal parts of the cells, are called as cell organelles, and these cell organelles are floating in the fluid called cytoplasm. The cell organelles may be mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies, lysosomes, ribosomes, and many others. This is about the onion cells. Now when we see the human cheek cells, that represents the animal cells, so these cells do not possess cell wall. The cell wall is absent. In the animal cells, we do not find any protective layer, that is cell wall. So the cell wall is absent in the human cheek cells, but a thin cell membrane is present. So this cell membrane is present in the human cheek cell, which is a thin layer. The next thing is, we can observe the dark bodies, that is nucleus, in the human cheek cells, which is present at the center. The nucleus usually found at the center of the human cheek cells. And as we have observed in the plant cells that a fluid is present inside the cell which is called as cytoplasm, likewise in the animal cells or in the human cheek cells also we can find a fluid in which the cell organelles can float, and this fluid is called as cytoplasm. So these are some of the differences and the similarities between the plant cell and the animal cell, or we can say between the onion cells and the human cheek cells. So we have seen some kind of plant cells and animal cells. So one question arises in our mind that are all plant and animal cells are alike? So the answer is no. All the plants and animal cells are not same. They are different depending upon their function. So they are different kinds of cells present in both plants and animal body based on their function. When we see or when we observe the multicellular organisms, they also possess various kinds of cells in the different parts of the body to perform different functions. Let's take an example of plant. We can see that the plant shows the different parts. There are the different parts of a plant present. So in these different parts of a plant, we can see the different cells are present, and these different cells are present. They show the variations because they need to perform the different functions. They need to carry out the different life processes in the plant body. So based on the function, the cells show the variations. Now when we talk about, or in the case of an animal cell, when we take an example of human beings, in our body also there are different kinds of cells present. For example, bone cells are present in our bone, muscle cells are present in our muscles, liver cells are present in the body part liver, and also the nerve cells can be found in the brain. So there are different kinds of cells which are present in the different parts of the body to carry out the different functions. Let us see the different kinds of cells which is present in the tridax stem, or we can say the spinach stem. So when we observe or when we take a spinach plant and when we cut this part of stem in horizontal way, that is when we cut the stem horizontally and take the thin sections of this stem, and by taking the thin section, when we prepare a mound or a slide of this spinach stem, we can observe the structure of spinach stem under the microscope. So this is the transverse section of tridax plant. When we do the section cutting of the tridax plant and observe it under the microscope, then we can see this type of structure where we can see the different types of cells present in the spinach plant. So the first layer which is present or which we can see, let us take or represent it as the alphabet A. In this class 8th, we are not going to give the particular name to the different kinds of tissues. We will study about the different tissues and its names in the next class, that is in the 9th standard. So in this class only we are representing the different kinds of cells which is present in the tridax plant by the alphabet. So the first, the outermost layer, let it be represented as A. Then next to the A, B layer is present, and these bundles, let's take it as C, and the middle portion is represented by D. The layer A shows the epidermal or the outermost cells, and this layer helps in giving the protection to the cells and also helps in giving support and the shape to the cell. Next to the A, layer B is present. This layer is composed of different kinds of cells, and these cells are green in color due to the presence of a pigment called chlorophyll. As we are taking the section cutting of spinach plant, so the stem of the spinach plant is also green in color. So the parts or the stem which is green in color, in that stem we can observe some green color cells, and in these green color cells we can find the structures called chloroplasts, and in these chloroplasts a pigment called chlorophyll is present, and this pigment chlorophyll helps in carrying out the process called photosynthesis by which the plants prepare their own food. Next to the B, some bundles we can see, and these bundles contains different types of tissues, and these different types of tissues which is present in these bundles of tridax stem can help in carrying out the transportations. It helps in taking or in absorbing the water from the soil and also in distributing the food material among the different parts of the plant. Therefore, these bundles helps in carrying out the transportation process in the plant body. This middle portion consists of some tissues, and these tissues form the bulk or the base of the plant body. The middle space of the cell is empty. There are no ground tissues present in the mature one, but in the young stems we can see the mass of the tissues which is present, and this mass of the tissue helps in making the base of the plant, or it helps in giving support to the plant body. So these are various kinds of cells, or the four major kinds of cells which we can observe in the different plant bodies. But here we have learned about the transverse section of the Tridax plant or the transverse section of the spinach plant. When we observe the animal cells or the human cells, we can see the different shapes of cells, and these different shapes and the sizes of the cells present in the human body in the different parts to carry out the different functions. This is smooth muscle cell, and here is the bone cell which is different from the smooth muscle cell, and these are the striped muscle cells. So here we can observe the different shapes of the cells, and this is a single cell. It is the largest cell which is present in the human body, and nerve cell, we can find the nerve cells in the brain. It helps in transferring the messages to the various body parts. So based on their function, it is designed. So this is a single nerve cell. When we talk about the blood cells are divided into two types, that are red blood cells and white blood cells. Red blood cells shows these type of structures, and they are red in color, and white blood cells is again classified into two main types, that are granulocytes and agranulocytes. Then granulocytes shows the three different types of cells. They are basophils, neutrophils and eosinophils, which shows the different shapes also. And agranulocytes of two types, they are monocytes and lymphocytes. Even these monocytes and lymphocytes are different in shape and in the structure to carry out the functions in the body of the human. So these are the various or the different kinds of cells which shows the different shapes in the human body. So these are certain examples of multicellular organisms. When we talk about the single cell or the unicellular microorganisms, we can take an example of amoeba. Amoeba is a unicellular microorganism. That means it have only one cell to carry out the life processes. So how it is showing some modifications to carry out its functions, let's see. So when amoeba has to take in the food material, it shows the extension of its cell membrane. So the cell membrane, when extends, it is called as pseudopodia. Pseudopodia means false feet. So amoeba is showing some extensions of the cell membrane to take up the food into its body, and also it forms the pseudopodia in order to show the locomotion. Locomotion is the movement of its body. So when amoeba has to move from one place to another place, that means when it has to perform locomotion, then it shows the extension of cell membrane, that is called as pseudopodia. Generally, the cells cannot be seen through our naked eye. When we see our skin is made up of 1,000 number of cells and various number of cells it is made of. But we cannot see a particular cell with our naked eye. We can see only under the microscope. So most of these cells cannot be seen through our naked eye. As the shapes of the cells vary, the size of the cells also vary. So let us talk about the size of the cells. The cells are very minute, and they usually measure by the units micrometer, or we can say microns. So the cells can be measured by using the unit micrometer or microns, which is represented by mu m. Now when we see the measurements, 1 meter is equals to 100 centimeters, 1 centimeter is equals to 10 millimeters, 1 millimeter is equals to 100 micrometers, and 1 micrometer is equals to 1000 nanometers. So by this we can understand how much the cells are smaller in size. As they are very minute, we cannot see through our naked eye. Smaller cells can be seen under the microscope, and it is measured in micrometers. meters or in microns. Let us see some examples of the cells. The smallest known cell is of bacteria. So bacteria is the smallest known cell and the size of this bacteria is 0.1 to 0.5 micrometers. And when we see the size of the human kidney cells or the liver cells, then the size of these cells are measured as 20 to 50 micrometers. But when we measure the human nerve cells, as I said you before, that it is the lengthy cell which is present in the human body. So when we measure the size of the human nerve cell, it is of 50 to 100 centimeters. And the biggest known cell is an ostrich egg, which can be measured as 17 centimeter into 18 centimeter. So the ostrich egg is a cell which is the biggest known cell and which can be measured as 17 centimeter into 18 centimeter. It is a single cell. The ostrich egg is a single cell which is bigger in size, which can be seen through our naked eye. That is the reason it is known as the biggest cell which is present in the world. So the size of the cells depend upon the function of the organisms. We should not think that the bigger animals possesses the bigger size cells. It is not true, because when we see the body of an elephant, it is made up of the large number of cells. It does not have the biggest cell. It is composed of many number of cells. That is the reason it is huge. It does not depend upon the size of the cell. The size of the cell depends upon their function and also on the number of the cells which is present in the body of the living organism. Let's have a quick recapitulation of all the terms which we have learned in the lesson Cell, the basic unit of life. Cell is the basic structural and functional unit which we can see in all the living organisms. And under this chapter we have learned about the discovery of the cell, discovery of the nucleus, shapes of the cells and size of the cells. So the first is discovery of the cells. There were many scientists who have demonstrated and who have studied about the structure of the cell, but the famous scientists Anthony van Leeuwenhoek and Robert Hooke carried some observations, or they observed many a times the different plant tissues in order to discover the cell. So the Anthony van Leeuwenhoek was a famous scientist who observed the different kinds of cells under his handmade microscope, and he observed many living and non-living objects to describe about the different cells present in the bodies. The Robert Hooke is the scientist who discovered the cell. So the Robert Hooke taken some cork cells, that is the dead cells of the oak tree. So after taking the cork cells, he prepared a mount. We have already discussed how to prepare a mount by cutting the thin sections and by applying a drop of water, and then we should cover it with a cover slip. So in this way he prepared a slide of cork cells and then he observed it under his own handmade microscope. When he observed these cork cells under the microscope, he have seen some little room-like structures, and these little room-like structures he named it as cell, because in the Latin the cell means little rooms. So by this the discovery of cell has been explained by the Robert Hooke. Then we have also seen certain activities under this lesson, like observing a matchstick, that is observing the dead cells under the microscope, observing an onion peel, we have observed the plant cells, and also we have observed the human cells by observing the human cheek cells. The next is discovery of the nucleus. Robert Brown is the scientist who discovered the nucleus. Robert Brown observed the epidermal cells of the orchid leaves and the different kinds of cells of the different plants. After observation, he came to know, or he claimed, that some dark bodies are present inside the cell as an integral part of the cell, and that dark bodies he named it as nucleus. So in this way the discovery of nucleus takes place. The next is shapes of the cells. There are different shapes which are present in the different bodies. So when we talk about the multicellular organisms, we can take the examples of animals and plants. We have learned about the different shapes of smooth muscle cells, bone cells, nerve cells and blood cells. And in the plant, when we have done the thin section cutting of the tridax plant or the spinach plant, we have observed the 4 major types of tissues which carry the different functions in the plant body. So by this we came to know that the cells are not alike in shape. They are of different shapes based on their function. When we have studied about the unicellular organisms, we took an example of amoeba, and we have learned that amoeba shows the extensions of its cell membrane to engulf the food which is present outside, and also to perform the locomotion. That means to move from one place to another place. It shows the extensions of the cell membrane. That extensions is called as pseudopodia. And the last one is size of the cells. As the shape of the cells vary, the size of the cells also vary depending upon their functions. We have learned that the smallest known cell is the bacteria, which is measured as 0.1 to 0.5 micrometers, and the biggest known cell is the egg of an ostrich. The egg of an ostrich is the biggest known cell, which is measured as 17 centimeter into 18 centimeter. So this is about lesson cell, the basic unit of life. Thank you.